stones in style, let's dance for a while. Heaven can wait, we're only watching the skies. Hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. Are you gonna drop the bomb or not? Let us die young or let us live forever. We don't have the power, but we never say never. Sitting in a sandpit, life is a short trip. The music's for the sad man. Can you imagine when this race is won? Turn our golden faces into the sun. Praising our leaders, we're getting in tune. The music's played by the madman. Forever young, I want to be forever young. Do you really want to live forever? Forever, forever, forever young. I want to be forever young. Do you really want to live forever? Forever young. Some are like water, some are like the heat. Some are a melody and some are the beat. Sooner or later they all will be gone. Why don't they stay young? It's so hard to get old without a cause. I don't want to perish like a fleeing horse. Youth like diamonds in the sun, and diamonds are forever. So many adventures couldn't happen today. So many songs we forgot to play. So many dreams swinging out of the blue. But let them come true. Forever young, I want to be forever young. Do you really want to live forever? Forever, forever, forever young. I want to be forever young. Do you really want to live forever? Forever, forever, forever young. I want to be forever young. Do you really want to live
Greetings and welcome to all of Kevin's Dahrouge family and their extended family, as well as the Wilcox family and our extended family, and any friends who have joined us for my memorial for Kevin Alexander Dahrouge. When I first met Kevin, shortly into our relationship, he played a track for me, and it really touched me, and I got a sense of the kind and wonderful person that he was. And so before I begin, I'd like you to go to the show notes and click on the track Vincent by Don McLean. And then after you've watched that video, I will continue with some notes from Kevin to the Wilcox family and his direct family. Okay, now before I begin, I'd like to say thank you for everyone out in Saskatchewan, all of Kevin's cousins who were so patient waiting for me to get this video together. I have quite a grueling schedule as a bike courier in the day, and then I go to Kung Fu 4 days a week, and getting other things done in between is really a challenge, so thank you very much for all of your patience. Okay, now to Kevin's notes to the Wilcox family. I've hummed and hawed about this letter. My energy level is so erratic, my mood too. This could be short. Anyway, I love you all so much. Seriously, you have no idea. Don't get me wrong, the wolves were decent enough, but they didn't have the capacity of love that has been instilled in all of you. I attribute this to Dave and Kay's unique talents as human beings, moreover parents. Thanks for showing me some pure and unadulterated love. I got a taste of it from my cousins in Saskatchewan when Dad had sent me 3 or 4 summers and one wonderful Christmas. I never heard the words "I love you" from my father or brother and my mother, who was smart and beautiful, but she was only able to spit it out just before her death on October 7th, 2000. I knew she did, but it just wasn't our way. My father would give us money in lieu of those 3 scary words, and the older I got, the more he loved me. My brother was my assassin. Kid you not, from pushing me down my grandfather's stairs to bucking me off my first horse when I was 5, to bouncing me out of the truck at 60 miles an hour on a washboard back road. I had crawled out the back window into the box because it was too crowded, and he put the pedal to the metal and watched me bounce higher and higher until I disappeared out of sight. Like a pro, I tucked and rolled and came out of it with only a sprained thumb. We shared a room for 10 years, and I didn't sleep well during that time. I did not stop, or it did not stop, until I left, and yet still there were other assaults. An honorable mention to my mother's dad, Grandpa. He loved me very much and made sure I knew it. Back to my mom. At 18 or so, she finds herself out in the bush, living in a skid house, looking after a baby, a man, and cooking meals for 5 or 6 other men in camp. A skid house is a small shack on a skid that can be moved around easily from site to site. She did this without running water. Don't ask me how. Mom was an only child, whereas Dad had one older brother who stayed on the farm and 5 sisters who all married, one of them in Calgary, my Auntie Anne with Uncle Cliff. Mom would have been 20 years old when I was born in Calgary in the General Hospital on June 5th, 1962. Mom's name was June. After 2 days, they noticed that I wasn't feeding. They inserted a feeding tube down into my stomach, and a few weeks later, they unblocked my esophagus with an operation that entailed my little body to be cut almost in half, and the doctors gave me a 50-50 chance of survival. At 9 months, I developed a bad case of eczema that runs in the family. I went back to Calgary to stay with Auntie Anne and her husband Cliff. I wouldn't have survived in the bush with all of that dust. We stayed in Calgary till I was strong enough, and after another 6 to 8 months, it was decided I was well enough to reunite with the family as the rash was under control. So then it was back to the bush with a baby, a toddler, and approximately 10 men to cook for, as the logging business was good and Dad had started his own company. The eczema stayed with me for the next 14 years. It was brutal, as I had it in almost every joint, and it kept me indoors most of the time, out of sports and away from other kids. Unfortunately, that left me a bit socially inept. I couldn't read people with the way they looked at me, and the looks I would give them were awkward and more disconcerting, so I'm sorry about that. Nevertheless, it wasn't until I met John Wilcox that I began to understand love, true love, familial love, brotherly, sisterly, etc. It was an exciting and manic introduction to love and all its ups and downs. The manic part was you guys, by the way. I only mention this to try to impart how much I needed some semblance of what a normal family with normal problems was like. Boy, we had him full. I learned so much and feel absolutely blessed for knowing you all. So thank you, and know that I loved you all very much. A special shout out to Lavelle for rescuing me numerous times and taking me to and from appointments when needed, and thank you to Bad Girl, Maddie, for being at the ready when Mom, Lavelle, couldn't help. I felt your emotional support aplenty as well. John Wilcox was solid. He was my rock. He showed me emotional support I thought not possible. He has been incredible with his understanding and long-lasting love, and was always at the center of my happy and wonderful life. Much love, Kevin. Okay, now I'd like you to all return to the show notes and click on a track that Kevin insisted I play. This is his specific selection he wanted, and it's a rather comical track by Roger Miller called My uncle used to love me, but she died. That track is So Kevin. Okay, now I'm going to continue with my section of the presentation. Kevin and I met on March 14th, 1988, when I stopped into the Calgary Gay Bar, that was 318 on 17th Avenue, to deliver a copy of the piece of music to the doorman that I had created to listen to while running with the Olympic torch back on January 19th, 1988. The track's name was Spirit of the Flame. After making my delivery, I decided to stay for a beer, and I noticed Kevin playing pool in front of me with a few of his friends, but I thought, nah, too much stress for trying to cruise today. And I looked away up the stairs, and that's when I heard a voice say, "Gosh, you're awfully cute." I looked forward, and he was standing right in front of me. And he says, "Hi, my name is Kevin." He said that he heard an audible voice in his head say, "That's him." We both had to work the next night, so we agreed to meet each other at another location the next evening and interview each other. Both of us were nervous that the other may not show. We were both on time at 6 o'clock sharp. We discussed our spiritual understandings and agreed that our souls existed before and after this life, that synchronicity brought us together, and that this was intended. Both of us were Geminis, and we were a perfect match. Within 3 days, which was March 17th, St. Paddy's Day, we knew we would be together until death do us part. It wouldn't be long before I noticed that Kevin had some emotional baggage due to being raised by alcoholic parents. He struggled with his self-esteem because of the emotionally destructive things his mother would say to him. "You'll never amount to anything. You're worthless. You're good for nothing. Stupid." The usual verbal abuse. It was a challenge at times to live with somebody suffering from depression, from emotional damage like that. He hid it well from others, but sometimes not so much from me. Soon after I met him, he told me that he had been suicidal in the past and that I had given him a reason to live. He said that as luck would have it, that if he acquired HIV, they would end up finding a cure. Kevin was one of the kindest people I've ever met, and he showed his compassion and generosity most of the time. Kevin worked as a biker on my board for a couple of years as I dispatched at Dynamics Courier, so I would always be able to know he was okay in traffic. I didn't want to hear somebody on the air say "biker down" without being able to call him to be assured it wasn't him that was hit. His unit number was 17, and this will be important later among the synchronicities. I was friends with most all of the bikers I dispatched, and we never let the potential conflict of interest affect his earnings unfairly, and he ended up taking more time off than being fed on the board unfairly. When Kevin heard my Spirit of the Flame track that I wrote for my Olympic torch run January 19th, 88, just 2 months before we met, he knew he wanted to invest in my music when the opportunity arrived. That opportunity came in June of 2003, when some land in Bright Creek he and his brother had inherited from his grandfather was sold. Kevin made it possible for me to explore and create music with some of the best machines available and made my dream a reality. As it turned out, what actually mattered was the journey, not the destination. What I thought was going to be a cakewalk ended up being a gargantuan and arduous task of mastering the machines before creating the music. During that time in 2005, I suffered a catastrophic crash of my music computer that was caused by an automated update to my Windows operating system. This was salvaged by an angel by the name of Keith Dolphin, who restored my system and saved my files at no cost, no less than 3 times. It would take 3 times to figure out what the issue was that was causing the crash. But it would take 4 years before I started mastering the controls and generating Digivox. That was the name that I was going by for my personal band name, and Digivox means digital voice. After finally uploading my music online to CD Baby in 2012, 2 tracks called The Saga Continues Ad Infinitum. That was a large gargantuan track that was 31 minutes and 13 seconds long, and that synchronicity will come up later. And The Conduit was 7 minutes and 35 seconds long, and that will also be coming up later in the synchronicities. However, the mix and resolution of the sound that I was hearing directly from my virtual studio was not being replicated on the CD, and I was deaf to the difference, assuming that it was the CD player that had the issue. The music had to be heard through headphones and only through the computer studio's large bandwidth to hear everything. What resulted when played from a mixed down CD was an embarrassing mash of gobbledygook that sounds ridiculous. But the same time that I had made that realization, my whole paradigm shifted. That happened when I was learning about how to be a search engine optimizer on YouTube to maximize traffic to my Digivox website, when I started playing other content that was appearing on the sidebar. The subjects were information on the truth about the actual power structure of our evil global system and televised false reality. In just a few weeks, my worldview and my priorities had completely shifted. To my astonishment and grave disappointment, I realized that my quest was not just irrelevant, but I knew that distracting my fans from this harsh reality wasn't what I wanted at all, and I had to get to work on preparing for our own survival for the approaching collapse of our civilization. This was a catastrophic disappointment for Kevin. All of that money, most of a decade of my work, rendered irrelevant. That was the day the music died, to quote Don McLean. He was so looking forward to an exciting life of touring and living large, but now was resigned to slave as a courier until he drops. As the next 5 years of our slavery marched along, I noticed that Kevin would kick his leg every 30 seconds or so in bed, even in his sleep. It wouldn't be until later that I realized that these were reflexes to bolts of pain from his developing cancer. When he finally had himself checked out, when the pain became unbearable, the doctors told him that it was advanced cancer in his colon and rectum, and that radical surgery was going to leave him handicapped with a colostomy bag. We started applying holistic methods to fight the cancer, but 3 months in, Kevin told me he was going to go through the medical system's treatments because the insurance company and the government won't give you ACE or CPP if you are refusing treatment. So he was blackmailed to take his deadly torture, and the government and the insurance companies expedited his demise to limit their financial contributions. I protested the decision, but in the back of my mind, I knew that Kevin was committing suicide by medical establishment. He also knew that returning to manageable health meant returning to his enslavement. His year and a half at home involved watching videos all day of the mad and disintegrating world he didn't want to live in. Stop the ride, I want to get off. And I don't blame him. Considering his horrid future, his oncologist and he elected to give him terminal cancer treatments, and in April of 2017, they hit him with chemo along with radiation to his colon. His treatments were brutal torture that brought him to his knees. 2 weeks after those treatments, he reported to me that he saw a video where he learned that chemo causes cancer to metastasize. By the beginning of July, the cancer had spread to the lymph glands in his left jaw and hip. In November of 2017, they gave him more radiation torture sessions in his jaw that caused such severe burning to his throat and tongue that it prevented him from eating solid food for 4 months until the day he died on April 6, 2018. He arrived home on the last day of radiation with a feeding tube running down his nasal passage. The next day, Kevin pulled it out because of the goop they gave him to feed himself. The second ingredient in the goop was corn syrup. And if you know anything about cancer, sugar feeds cancer. Giving Kevin back to the universe through medically assisted suicide turned out to be the most important, most painful, yet joyous and honorable task I have ever had to perform. My relief was paramount to see his pain terminated. My grief losing him was also paramount. He was so brave. The agonizing pain made him impatient to get it over with in the day and moment of the procedure. He behaved as calm and relaxed as if he was having a blood test. The procedure was so peaceful and merciful. The wonderful doctor and staff of MAID, which is medical assistants in dying, were stellar in their handling of his procedure. All three were completely and candidly real, instead of what you get with many medical professionals who feign fake happiness and empathy. Now for the astonishing synchronicities. And now for the astonishing synchronicities. I have family members like my sister Lavelle who are devout coincidence theorists and will write the synchronicities off as only meaningless coincidences. but the number of them and the content is what we need to pay attention to. This is God and Kevin talking to me, or us, through synchronicities. Kevin's last breath escaped his lungs at exactly 14:14 or 2:14 p.m. on April 6, 2018. Exactly 1 hour later, the Humboldt, Saskatchewan hockey team bus was struck by a semi-trailer truck, killing 16 young men. The synchronicity linked to Humboldt is that Kevin's grandfather used to live there. The afternoon that Kevin left, the trip number count at A Plus Courier rolled from 899999 to 900000. The next morning, the car's odometer that I drive on weekends to take care of my parents' needs rolled from 1099999 to 110000. Put them together, and that's 911. That will come up significant later on. In the middle of December 2017, just before the worst winter with the most snowfall in all memory, a bike courier friend of mine wanted to repay me for landing his job with the company I work for, A Plus Courier. He offered to sell me his $3,000 bike for $1,000, and I could pay him in $200 installments. It wouldn't occur to me until after Kevin passed that Blaze is his name, sold me a bike that was made by Giant, and the model is Faith. I had to have giant faith that Kevin's soul would survive the blaze, which is a cremation. The bike is red and blue, which is connected to red pill, blue pill information we have been ingesting on YouTube. At the beginning of February, just before Kevin's last test results that dictated assisted suicide as the best protocol, a good friend by the name of Carlo, who we have known for 30 years, is hired on with me to replace Blaze, who was missing too much time, arrives with the courier plate 3113, matching the time signature of the saga continues ad infinitum to remind me of exactly that. Prior to arriving at A+, Carlo had the courier unit number 55 for 12 years, a fact that Carlo shared with me only last week. Kevin died at the age of 55, which is also the unit number on the door of our condo we have lived in for 26 years. Now, taking into account that Kevin and I met on March 14, 1988, and my track, The Conduit, ended with a soundbite of Stephen Hawking speaking about the origins of the universe. Stephen Hawking died on March 14, 2018, exactly 30 years to the day Kevin and I met. Kevin's assisted suicide was the conduit to the other dimension. The day of his last MRI diagnostic was March 17th, that's St. Paddy's Day, 30 years to the day that we had decided that he was going to be, or we would be together until the day we die. And his terminal results were given to him on March 20th. We were completely on the schedule of MAID, that's medical assistance in dying, in regards to when they would set up the visit to our condo to kill Kevin. The procedure ended up being scheduled for April 6, 2018. Now, I have used J23 as my Digivox identity logo. My last name is Wilcox, and W is the 23rd letter of the alphabet. Kevin's assisted suicide was exactly 23 days after our 30th anniversary, 23 days after Stephen Hawking's death. Kevin's death was also the 96th day of the year, and his death was actually 55 days before the month of June. Back in December 2017, I attended a driver biker meeting with A Plus and with A Plus Couriers and the owner Don, and the owner said to me, "I noticed that your courier plate says 5121. That is incorrect because the guy who made the plate got it wrong. The number should actually read 6121. So I immediately made the plate to match it as 6121. When you add the 1 and the 2 and the 1 together, you end up with 4. And with the 6, it matches the date of Kevin's death, 6th day, 4th month. So the plate actually had that numerology within it. My unit number at A Plus is 04, which links with April, the month of his death. I drove Kevin out to Bragg Creek for the last time to see his father, Alec, and brother John, and Sandy, and Jen, and Robbie, On Sunday, April 1st, when we were there, I noticed this 3D picture of owls on John's living room wall. The day after Kevin's death, I stopped in at the farmer's market we used to frequent with the intent to buy some art to hang on my walls as a gesture of moving on without him. I immediately stumbled upon the same picture of the owls for just $15. I purchased it with another one, and this one of a Rastafarian lion with dreadlocks. The day after we visited his family on Monday, April 2nd, Kevin asked me to call H to make arrangements for his body to be retrieved from the medical examiner, retrieved by the medical examiner, and cremated by Pearson's funeral home. The day after we visited his family on Monday, April 2nd, Kevin had asked me to call H to make arrangements for his body to be retrieved from the medical examiner and cremated by Pearson's funeral home. He said, just tell them that you are my agent. I didn't realize he didn't want me to identify myself as his partner because he had not listed me as his partner and a financial contributor in order to maximize his coverage, which was still minimal. What else can he do when we are buried in credit card debt? I called up Aish, and the woman on the other end of the phone said, his caseworker is on holidays and she could help. After making my request, she says, and who are you? And I say, oh, I'm just his partner of 30 years. And I stepped right in it. She says, really? You aren't listed here as a partner. I'm going to have to ask you to send your tax records for 2016 and 2017 to see if he was even eligible for coverage. I got off the call in a state of panic and horror. What was I to do? I can't let Kevin worry about this before he dies. What if Aish is covering his medically assisted suicide on Friday? I don't want Kevin's damaged body to do a slow rot in Potter's Field where they send the bodies of indigent homeless people. He wanted to be cremated, and I wanted it as well. I decided that I would handle the Aish issue after Kevin's assisted suicide on Friday and resume the negotiations after he's gone. On Monday, April 9th, I attempted to call Aish to explain why they should cover Kevin's cremation, but I was getting the voicemail vortex and I wasn't able to get a human on the line. Now I'm panicking. Kevin's body is at the medical examiner's office, ready to be retrieved by Pearson's on Tuesday, and nothing is in place to take care of him. As if Kevin put the thought into my head, I realized right away I had to call the people at Pearson's funeral home to see if they would help me. I got a wonderful angel on the phone by the name of Annette. I explained to her what the issue was with Aish and that I was trying to talk to them to explain that despite the fact that Kevin worked the system to make up for our credit card debt, the two of us had actually saved the Alberta taxpayer over $200,000 since April 19, 2012, after we learned that HIV was a fake disease based on a harmless passenger virus that Dr. Robert Gallo lied about to make millions from his HIV test, and that the global HIV fraud is costing $48 billion a year for fiction. We abandoned our HIV doctors and terminated the consumption of our HIV medications immediately, and as a result, I am living, walking, talking, absolute proof, not a suggestion, that HIV is a hoax. It is nothing but psychological warfare, murder, extortion, and eugenical genocide for the purpose of extorting billions of dollars in fake meds and medical theater. The meme is also being used by monsters like Bill and Melinda Gates to justify injecting sterilizing, paralyzing, and life-ending vaccines in the third world, eugenics and genocide. Annette could have hung up on me with an outrageous story like that, but she said, John, I think we can help you. We have back channels to Aish because we deal with them all the time. Let me put you onto the phone to our funeral director, Carolyn Stevenson, and let us talk to them. Caroline asked me to come by their office to speak with her, so we arranged Wednesday, April 11th at 8:30. When I arrived at Pearson's, I realized that their address was 4121 17th Avenue Southeast and made a synchronicity with my courier plate 6121, and Kevin's unit number was 17, and the date was 411. I explained the situation and told her about the synchronicities with Carlos' 3113 plate and the matching Saga Continues ad infinitum, Stephen Hawking on my track, The Conduit, and Stephen dying on March 14th, our anniversary, and my 6121 courier plate, and now their address. And while I'm speaking to her, I realize that this is all happening today, 411. And so I tell her, do you know why this is all happening today? Because this is for your information. She says, oh my God, John, you're giving me goosebumps. 2 days later, on Friday the 13th, I retrieved a voice message from Carolyn that H was going to cover Kevin's cremation and that everything was going to be okay and that the cremation would probably take place that day. I called her back and asked that she let me know the time of the cremation so I may be able to identify any more synchronicities. As I was exiting one of our newest buildings downtown, Brookfield Place, after doing a bank deposit for a client, Caroline called me at 4:25 to report that Kevin's cremation commenced at 4 o'clock and that it takes 2 hours for completion. I said to her, Kevin is laughing with me right now because he is being cremated on Friday the 13th and he was full ablaze at 4:20, up in smoke. Friday the 13th is infamous because on October 13, 1307, King Philip ordered the Knights Templar to be exterminated and many of them were tortured and burned at the stake. Kevin's obituary would just happen to show in the Calgary Sun on April 17th to match his courier number. And that morning, I watched a YouTube video linking Brookfield Place in New York, standing in front of where the Twin Towers fell, with Illuminati symbols on all 4 towers of that complex. The Knights Templar are the ancestors of the Illuminati and have connections with the Jesuits, Freemasons, Knights of Malta, and Knights of Columbus, and 9/11. I rode to work thinking about the amazing revelation about Brookfield Place, and the very first random trip that I'm dispatched is a direct rush from Carve Energy, which is Carve is something that you do when you're skating or skiing, located on the 17th floor of Bow Valley Square 2, going to Prairie Sky Royalty on the 17th floor of First Canadian Centre. So it was going from Bow Valley 2, that was 2 of us, going to First Canadian Centre, that's 1, and he went to Prairie Sky Royalty on the 17th floor, from 17 to 17. Now that I had Kevin's cremation taken care of, next on the agenda was to arrange the courier memorial at a local downtown bar. This was for his friends, for his courier friends to send him off. Kevin insisted that I hold a separate memorial there for them so that they could exit outside and have a joint if they should want to. The morning of the courier memorial, that was the following Friday after Friday the 13th, it occurs to me that it's April 20th, 4:20. 1 hour before the memorial, I stopped outside that bar to take this picture of the southern sky. We would gather there at 1700 and I would count the guests and there were 17 of them. On May 6th, I decided to keep my promise to Kevin and go for a hike, up Johnson's Canyon to the Ink Pots by myself and smoke a joint up there for him. On the way there, I'm listening to a track, Why Don't You Meet Me in the Middle of the Canyon? My bladder was getting full, so I made the first available rest stop. That happened to be the Stoney Nakoda First Nations Casino, so I went in to use their washroom. To pay for my visit, I walked into the VLT section and wandered around looking for a fire-themed machine. After walking past several, I was getting a vibe from some Inferno titled unit, and I fed a $5 bill into it and started placing bets. The 500 credits were dwindling down to 100 when the machine started ringing and flashing and the credits were going up. I'm watching and saying, keep going, but it stopped at almost double the credits I started with. I realized that I could keep playing and lose it all again, or I could leave and don't waste any time getting to the canyon and leave in the black. I cashed out, and as I exited the casino, I realized that I had dropped $5 into the machine, and I cashed out at 9:20, and that was a difference of $4.20. As I turned onto the Bow Valley Expressway, this sign greeted me showing 17 kilometers to Johnson Canyon. Arriving at the canyon, I see a sign that says no vacancies in the parking lot. I had to troll around like a shark waiting for someone to leave. This took about 10 minutes. I started up the canyon and then I realized I better turn back and use the washroom 200 yards behind me before proceeding. So I backtracked, peed, and resumed my ascent. On the way up the canyon, I am encountering more tourists than I've ever seen before, and the climb after the upper falls was a challenge to negotiate because of the snow and mud that was in the way. All of these factors affected the time of my arrival to the ink pots. When I arrived, it was sunny and warm, and I walked to the center of them all, and the thought struck me, check the time. When I pulled out my phone, the clock said 16:19, and in the next second, it changed to 16:20. That's 4:20 once again. I lit the joint, wept with joy, sat there for 10 minutes, and started my descent back to the car. So both at the casino and up at the ink pots, I had two indications of 4:20 letting me know that Kevin was right there with me. On the way down the canyon, I encountered this image in the canyon wall. In the few weeks following Kevin's death, I returned to the farmer's market to purchase more of the 3D art for my walls. They included these, and I was sticking to an animal theme. One picture stood out to me that I wanted, but it wasn't really in the animal theme, but I wanted it anyway. It was this ship. One of our great courier friends, James Simon, whom had given Kevin a bike that I ended up riding at work for 3 years, had moved out to Nanaimo, BC on the coast a few years ago. 4 days before Kevin's birthday, on Tuesday, June 5th, Kevin's birthday is Tuesday, June 5th, James posted on Facebook, I'm going to be in town for a few days, so in order to see the most friends, please come and meet me at the Ship and Anchor at 17th Avenue and 5th Street on Tuesday at 1700. James is our only courier friend who is the closest to the ships on the coast. Just last week, I rode past the lounge that we had our A-plus driver meeting back in November, where I learned the correct license plate. And I discovered that the name of the place is called the Galley, Galleys, linking the ship. Later, as I decide to get together with a close friend whom I consider an empath to get some therapeutic emotional support, I realized that the Rastafarian represented Josh, and as he used to have a dreadlock mane. One of the subjects that Kevin and I discovered was gematria, which is the practice of encoding numbers from words. In gematria, 44 is the kill number. When I returned to Pearson's funeral services to pick up Kevin's remains, when I pulled up to the door, the odometer in the car read 111144. That's what happened at Kevin's assisted suicide. They killed him. 1111 again showing up. That's the Brookfield Place Knights Templar number 1111. 1111 refers to November 11th, where the Armistice Treaty was signed at exactly the 11th minute of the 11th hour of the 11th month, where the Illuminati was letting the world know that they will begin and end all wars. And so this is connected completely with the Knights Templar and Illuminati. Pearsons gave me an envelope which contained a gift of $50 for me and the change back from the cost of the obituary they had posted in the Calgary Sun for Kevin. I had left them $300 in cash in their mail slot a week or two earlier, and the change back was $3.16. My name is John, and John 3:16 is a quote from the Bible that says, "For God loved the world so much that he gave his only Son, and for he who believe in him shall have eternal life." Later, I would deliver a trip for the Calgary Homeless Society to the Calgary Urban Project with the number 909316. The last two synchronicities occurred this past Thursday and Friday when I made a couple of random purchases that both came to me the total 1414, the time of Kevin's last breath. Oh yeah, and to add one more synchronicity, today, which is the 150th day without Kevin, I stopped at the bank machine to pull $100, and the time, I didn't realize until I exited, but the time was 11:11, and the machine, I guess, was low on larger bills, and the machine spat out 20 $5 bills, which is 5, 5, 10 times. These synchronicities are signposts in life that indicate you are exactly in the right place at the right time and everything is perfect as it is. Focus on what you have to learn from the circumstances and roll with it. Kevin's death has served as a catalyst to motivate me to go after the demons who murdered millions of patients in order to sell placebos at $1,600 a month. That's today's price. No, that's 2017 price. It may be higher today. This is ultimately the legacy that Kevin and I will contribute to society. He and I did not go through all that pain and bullshit not to act upon it. I am throwing myself at the medical establishment and I will need everyone's help to share our experience and make the crimes known. But my own sister and her husband, whose brother died of AIDS, have demonstrated that even people who need to hear the truth the most won't necessarily be accepting to hear it. They have chosen to excommunicate me and deny the fact that I'm alive and well after more than 6 years without meds or doctors, and I say shame on them. All of my available time is taken working and training in Wing Chun Kung Fu. In order to create the time to pursue this, I'm hoping to transition to working as a YouTube and social media content creator propagating our story. I will be soliciting the support and donations to my PayPal and Patreon accounts as well as other platforms as I acquire them. I fully anticipate PayPal and Patreon to terminate those accounts as soon as they realize the damning information that I'm bringing upon people who actually own stock in those companies. There is a very aggressive censorship campaign online lately, and I am apprehensive about how successful or how far the truth can travel before my PayPal and Patreon's account are terminated by the medical mafia. You can help me stay alive by sharing my information. The more eyes on my situation, the more that I become a liability to kill me. This is Kevin's and my legacy. And that completes my part of the presentation, and I would like to finish by directing your attention to the remaining tracks in the show notes. These are pieces of music that I found before, during, and after Kevin's departure from this world, and I hope you enjoy them. Thanks to everyone who joined me with this video presentation and sharing your love and grief with me.